usually what is reality is that when we do that, when we are always available, when we can't say no, we're actually not anywhere. So we say that servant leaders are present. If they're at home, they're present at home, because you'll never be able to serve the need if you're not present. And if you're
I really
at work,
like that. Yeah.
you are present, because if you're not present, you could be there and you could be 1,000 miles away, and you might as well be 1,000 miles away.
Welcome to the Christian Leader Made Simple podcast. I really hope this episode helps you learn and master the skills you need to grow your leadership effectiveness and enjoyment. Be sure to hit the subscribe button to get notified as soon as I post a new session so you don't miss a single episode. I'd also greatly appreciate any reviews, likes, and shares that you can give me. It just helps me extend my reach to more people. So leaders, I know just how frustrating it can feel when you're in the weeds of work or ministry and life is chaotic, you're struggling to feel effective, and you're just not enjoying leadership as much as you could be. And so to help you, after many years of leadership and executive coaching, I've developed a framework called the Christian Leader Blueprint that'll guide you to find clarity in your life and leadership. It'll help you gain a better rhythm of life. It'll help you see yourself more clearly, to leverage your strengths, and you'll produce more productive relationships. It's a step-by-step guide to leadership transformation. And I have that in 2 formats now. I have a free short guide that you can find on ryanfranklin.org, and I have a book, The Christian Leader Blueprint. And you can find that in any format, including an audiobook, wherever you buy your books. I have a few more things on my website that you may be interested in, so just head on over to ryanfranklin.org and check it all out. And now, let's get to our session. I'm excited today to have on the podcast a friend of mine, Jon Kidwell, and I want to start by telling you a little bit about Jon. Jon is the founder and leader of Leadwell, which is a leadership development company. He is also the author of a brand new book that will hit Amazon and other places on January the 17th. It's called Redefine Your Servant Leadership, Amplify Your Integrity, Influence, and Impact. And that is what we are here to talk about today. And so, Jon, welcome to the Christian Leader Made Simple podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Ryan. It's so fun to be able to be a listener and now a guest, and as you said, just a friend of yours. So being able to do this together is just absolutely wonderful. Thanks for the opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm super excited about the book that's coming out. That's a topic that is near and dear to my heart. And I guess just to kind of kick us off in this interview, can you kind of share with us what in your background prepared you to write this book? How did your personal and your professional experiences shape your views on leadership and servant leadership?
Well, that is a great question, and it really takes me back to when I was about 12 years old, and I'm at a youth group kind of gathering at our church, right? I don't know if you all have youth council or if anyone is used to any of those, almost like a student government type thing, but there were some of us that were kids and there were some that were adults. And I don't remember much of the meeting except for I remember a gentleman that was overly loud, quite aggressive, and just pushy. I'm sitting in the car with my dad as we drive home, and I start asking him leadership questions. And my dad said something extremely profound to me, and it stuck with me. He said, "Jon, you don't have to be the loudest person in the room to be the leader." And at 12, like that really started to frame for me some of these leadership things. And I have a knack for it, leading, teaching. Those are some of the things that I've just always been drawn to. And so, I did the captains of sports teams and started clubs and just kind of continued down that path. Eventually I became a teacher. And if you would have asked me, I would have thought from 3rd grade on, my role was to be a teacher, to go be a principal. My grandfather was a principal. My great-grandfather was a principal. My uncle was a principal. My mom was a special ed teacher for 30 years before she went into school administration. Like, this was the path. And I got diverted after doing my master's in ed administration and leadership, because leadership and business just kept kind of coming together for me. This idea of servant leadership was becoming more defined and refined as I went through and figuring out, like, this way of doing things to help other people, leading by example, putting people in a place where I want them to succeed and grow, as well as whatever we're doing. Like, this was a natural draw for me. I transitioned out of education after being pulled over on the side of the highway by God and basically realizing I'm going somewhere else. But I can't get away from mission-driven, cause-driven work. I wanted to do something that mattered. I wanted to test out this leadership ability and kind of see if I could do some things with business. We don't get much of that in the education world. And so I wanted to test these things. I went to the YMCA and started working for the Y in Houston, Texas. And I found that I do have a knack for some of those things, for engaging with people and solving financial problems and being able to bring some of these things together. I was fortunate enough that I experienced 7 promotions in 6 years. And if we're talking kind of church world, I went from being kind of an associate or a minister in a kids area or in a part of the church to being vice president of innovation and operations, leading 1,100 people at multiple sites around town and millions of dollars in the budget, and got to engage with organizations across the nation and even some internationally. It was awesome. It was tremendously awesome. I also learned in that process that there were a lot of gaps and that there were a lot of things that I thought about leadership and servant leadership that were really defining me. And I was letting other people's perceptions, I was letting other people's definitions of servant leadership and really honestly of me start to influence how I was showing up to lead. And it was in the middle of that tenure where everything just came to a halt when I had one of those conversations. A boss pulled me aside and said, "Can we talk?" And he said, "Jon, I know that you are a person that is honest," which he'd hit on something that I value very deeply. And he said, "However, your inability to engage in these meetings, to disagree, to handle conflict, makes me think that you're hiding something and that you're not being honest. And you need to work on that if you want to continue to be on this team."
Wow.
And that piece of feedback is really what started to unravel all of what I had built as the definition and the understanding and the way that this was supposed to go. And it sent me back to figure out what is actually going on and how can I truly lead as a servant, to be a servant leader, and to pull together the things that I was separating out and really just trying to hold. Things like people and performance. Things like saying yes and saying no. Things like being able to deliver hard truths, but to do it kindly. I was not able to bring a lot of these things together because I thought that a servant leader had to be a certain way. And if you weren't, then that's not who you were.
Yeah, that's tremendous, Jon. And I would say that a lot of my audience, not everyone, but a lot of my audience is pastors and church leaders, and would probably struggle in a lot of ways. In fact, I know struggle in a lot of ways in these same areas. So thank you for being transparent and vulnerable with sharing that with us. Over the last number of years, so much has been written on leadership and organizational systems. So I'm just curious, and you sort of hit on it there, but maybe you can dive a little deeper. Why did you feel compelled to write this particular book?
Well, a lot of what you just referenced with your own audience is what compelled me to write this. Is I have a tremendous amount of experience with what I call the serving professions, education, not-for-profits, ministries, kind of people that do work for a purpose greater than just the bottom line. And it could be healthcare and nursing and whatever that is. I find that more often than not, there is a tendency to feel the need to always be available. That if we make decisions for a business purpose, then there's this judgment that, oh, you really don't care. Like, you just fooled us this whole time about caring for the people, and that we have to be permissive and just kind of get rolled over, almost like a doormat. And that if for some reason we are not all bleeding heart all the time, like I said, then it's just written off as, oh, this has been a fake out the whole time. And what I realized was that I was the one that was burning myself out. I was the one that was putting myself into a place where the integrity that I was trying to exemplify and to hold, I'd actually put in jeopardy because of my inability to engage. I couldn't meet the demands that I was facing. And even though I was trying to be honest, I wasn't being completely honest. And my influence would stop as soon as it went from, I can no longer please people, because now I got all these people in all these different places that I have to please. And that means I can't keep everybody happy. One, because I'm unhappy. Two, because my wife is unhappy because of all the things that I'm trying to do outside of my home commitments, my real life commitments. And I realized that I'm not the only one doing this. And this is really what compelled me. The last piece is as a part of this journey, and just saying, like, what is servant leadership? I did the thing that people do when they don't actually want to research, and I Googled it. And that's where I started before going deeper. But I Googled it, and I did, okay, servant leadership definition. And you know what I got? Nothing. I got nothing. The closest thing I could find was a servant leader is one who serves. And that's circular reasoning. And that just continued to take me exactly where I was going, which is about how I felt, like a hamster in a wheel. If you look at what Greenleaf put forward, one quick thing, and then I want to hear this. If you look at what Greenleaf put forward, right? He wrote The Servant as Leader in 1970. It's a philosophy. And inside of there, he said it's one who desires to serve first and then aspires to lead. And that as a part of that, they're growing the people and empowering the people to be healthier, wiser, and more autonomous. And that's still, that's a philosophy, right? It wasn't quite a definition. And so for me, I had to redefine what servant leadership was, what leadership was, and then figure out what was getting in the way of that being possible for me and other people.
Yeah. So, which you sort of dabbled in that just a second ago but just out of curiosity, have you come to a conclusion, if you were asked, what is servant leadership today, how would you clearly and simply define that?
Absolutely. And I would say that leadership and servant leadership are synonymous, that they are in fact one in the same, that to lead is to serve and to serve is to lead. And the way that I define leadership is the act of influencing the attitude, thoughts, behaviors of others toward a shared purpose.
Say that one more time.
It is the act of influencing the attitude, thoughts, and behavior of others toward a shared purpose. And so where I built that from is I went back to the teachers, right? Some of them are old teachers, not all of them are old teachers, but to the teachers from Greenleaf. And then I looked at, what does Maxwell say that leadership is? I looked at how Lencioni looks at leadership and saying that it is this action, that it's not a position. And Maxwell talks about influence. And for me, I also went back to the Bible and tried to look at, what does the Bible say? And I looked in Matthew, the first shall be last and the last shall be first. I looked in Philippians 2, where we see Christ's example of humility, where let us not only look to our own interests, but to the interests of others. And as Christ did, equal with God, right? Authority, humbled himself even to death on a cross, all of those things. So started weaving in some of those pieces and found the story of David and went back through David's kind of significant journey as a leader, always, not perfectly, but always trying to do God's mission for him here in the world, right? He unified Israel. He grew their territory. He won a lot of battles, and that's how they kind of did business back then in kingdom world, right? And later in Psalms, it said that David led them with a sincere heart and a skilled hand. And I started to see these things come together. And so then started to write a bunch of iterations before landed on the act of influencing others, or the act of influencing the attitude, thoughts, and behaviors of others toward a shared purpose.
I like that. So before we continue on with the podcast, this episode is brought to you by Christian Leader Community Coaching. Are you a Christian leader experiencing low productivity or a chaotic lifestyle? And maybe you're overwhelmed and just unsure of what it's going to take to create growth in your life? And so I want to introduce to you our Christian Leader Community Coaching program. Through our step-by-step framework, you're going to discover a better rhythm of life, you'll see yourself more clearly, leverage your strengths, and build more productive relationships. With our full archive of courses, our supportive community of peers, a powerful leadership assessment to get you quickly focused, we also have live community coaching, and so much more. And I've personally seen its huge impact with leaders from all over the world, experiencing laser-focused growth in their lives. And now, through this community, this experience is open to you. And we want to help you implement these simple frameworks and then celebrate with you as you experience significant results in your life. Don't wait any longer. Go to ryanfranklin.org and join the Christian Leader Community Coaching today. And I look forward to seeing you inside the community. Now back to our podcast. Let's bring in the servant part of that, and specifically, what is servant to you? And I'm just curious if you have any thoughts on why it's sort of left off in the definition of leadership these days. Why do we not see that so often as maybe in years past today?
Yeah. Well, what's interesting is there is a rise kind of coming back with agile organizations, with people trying to remove hierarchy, that servant leadership has taken a little bit of a resurgence, which is a wonderful thing. However, like you said, they're not kind of harping in on that servant part. And so even recently, there was a Forbes article that put traditional leadership versus servant leadership. And I've already told you personally, I believe that they're one and the same, that there is no other kind of leadership other than the kind where you involve service. But they separate out traditional as very, very business first, goal oriented. It's about results. They go so far as to say that a servant leader doesn't worry about those things. They are merely focused on the people who are under them, which for those of us in servant leadership are like, yeah, we don't really talk about it that way, right? We don't talk about subordination and people being under us and all that, but they say they merely focus on the people under them and not on the company as a whole. And so I think kind of this separation of is one of the things that keeps it out of kind of the vernacular, if you will. I think the other thing is that narrative right there. If any of us are a leader that has an aspiration, which we're told in 1 Timothy, like the first qualification of a leader is that they have to aspire to lead. But if we have that aspiration, then I'm not going to go the servant leadership path, because that article and culture is telling me it's only going so far, right? That's what you do to do this. It's not what you do to run the business. It's not what you do to look at the company as the whole. And I would argue, and I do in the book, that no, it's in fact, it's a both and. So some of the vernacular, the language we start to use is that servant leaders are mission driven people always, right? And we say that servant leaders bring a servant heart and a business mind, and that we start to bring these aspects of servant leadership together so that we can, in fact, advance and try to reach that purpose, that wonderful mission, and do it in a way where we grow people and we grow profit, where we are both successful on the bottom line, but successful in terms of how well people are and that they are growing and succeeding in their life and at work.
Yeah, understanding that these are real people with
Yeah.
real feelings, real lives. And it's not just about the bottom line, but it's also about creating a culture and an environment that is successful and building more productive relationships, essentially.
And in fact, that is the path to an even healthier health in terms of you and I, Ryan, right? People being healthy and well, but also to the organization. Because if we go the other route, it becomes fickle because people are in and out all of the time. Our results are meager and they are completely dependent on me as the leader engaging, kind of doing the thumb on the scale of saying, okay, this is what we have to do, because that's all that people are waiting for is my authority. I haven't empowered them to be able to go and to decide and to lead themselves in our organization. So it is in fact the path that brings about those two things, personal and professional success.
Yes, which the other path, the thumb on the head kind of a path, it eventually that erodes relationships and erodes success of the organization. I was just in conversation with someone last night, actually, of an organization. I won't name the organization, but they were having to lay off people because they essentially, my opinion of it is they got too big and they got focused on the bottom line, and they kind of forgot the relational aspect, the servant aspect of their business, and it's not turning out well for them. And it's super important that we understand that we are dealing with real people, real relationships here.
Yeah.
So redefining servant leadership.
Yeah.
Why do you talk about redefining servant leadership? Has the definition changed over time? And what was it then? If so, how do you see it now?
Yeah. So I will focus in on redefining your servant leadership, right? Or my servant leadership, or one of the listeners' servant leadership. And so outside of not having a solid definition, a foundation to build off of, here's what I found in myself and with others, is that all of us look at different aspects of servant leaders and we call that the thing, right? That's the thing that is paramount to servant leaders. I've heard you say relationship. And some of us would do that. And we would say, listen, it's all about people. It's all about relationship. And where if you and I were talking 10 years ago, I would say, no, Ryan, like servant leaders' character, their moral, ethical, principled character, that integrity, like that's the thing. And we'd still go find somebody else that said, no, man, like servant leaders, they are active and they're serving. Like you get out there and you serve food to the homeless. You get out there and you pick up trash in your organization. You get out there and do the job that nobody wants to do. You need to have the skills to be able to do that. And we would argue these things. And what I realized through a mutual connection that you and I have, which is through Townsend's work, right? The work of Dr. John Townsend and the work of Dr. Henry Cloud, is that all of those things are actually integrated and oriented to one another. That it is, as I develop my own character, yes, the morals, the principles, the ethical standards, but my internal character, the ability to meet the demands of reality, to be able to do that, to be able to build and maintain healthy relationships and get the relational support that I need, as well as growing in the competencies and the skills that I need as a leader. And it's bringing those three things together that actually are the foundation, the building blocks to be able to then show up as a servant leader, to lead with integrity, to gain and build and responsibly use your influence, and to make an even greater impact than you were previously, because now you have all of the pieces of the puzzle connected internally, and then you can connect them with others externally.
Yeah. I love the thought of that. I love the way that you combine those things, because it's not all about relationships. I mean, if that were the case, we could just get in a circle and hold hands and sing a little bit, but that's not the case. It's
That's right.
we've got to get a job done as well. It's about a bottom line also. but we can't neglect relationships, can't neglect even serving one another for that bottom line, because that doesn't end well.
No.
So,
and it doesn't end well. It ends in a tower that's toppled over. And in the book, I outline
Exactly.
it like a Jenga tower, right?
Uh-huh.
Three of those things. And if we just build them stacked vertically on top of each other and we pull one of those out, what happens? They all come down, right? If we just build one tower right on top of each other, just all those little blocks straight up, and you get a little snafu there in the middle and it all comes down. And if in fact, like Jenga, we build them in that crosshatch pattern, right? 3, character relationship skills. The thing is that you can actually invite other people to help you build or insert blocks where you don't have them. And if one of them comes, you don't completely destroy the entire tower. That's the beautiful part about life as opposed to Jenga, is we get to put some of those pieces back in. I'm not saying all of them, but when we build it in that way and we're not just relying on kind of one piece of the pie or puzzle, if you will, it's a much stronger tower and foundation, like you were saying.
Yeah. So, Jon, I haven't actually got my hands on the book yet. Obviously, it comes out.
It's coming your way.
It comes out in a week or so, I think, from the time of posting this recording. And but in reading the information that you sent me, I'm seeing some threads about myths around servant leadership. And so, what are some of these myths that we need to know when we're considering servant leadership?
So in the book, we outlined 10 of them, and I'll go through a couple of them here right now.
Okay.
But the first one is that because we want to serve people, we want to help them grow, we want to empower them, that, servant leaders are people pleasers. And that is an absolute myth, because servant leaders are first mission driven. And it is in fact that mission, that greater purpose, something that is above any one person, that behooves them, that leads them, that influences them to a mission first, people always approach. So the first myth that we come against is that servant leaders are people pleasers.
Let me just say this. A lot of servant leaders are people pleasers, but they don't have to be.
A recovering people pleaser right here, right? 100%.
I could be tagged with that one.
Yeah. Many of us can, because like you said, the strong desire to help, to serve, that combination of care and compassion leads us to a place where we want to help people. And when we put people in front of the mission, then it is actually the people we try to please. And we get distracted from being able to serve, as Greenleaf says, and as we see in many other places, the highest priority need. We want to meet needs. I don't just want to do what you want and what you desire and what keeps you happy, because that's not going to do any of us any good for a long-term relationship or long-term success. So that first myth is people pleasing. One of the other ones that always gets with everybody is that servant leaders are always available. We have open door policies. I mean, except for right now, right, Ryan? Because you and I both have our door closed. So does that mean that we're not servant leaders because the door's closed? I mean, I don't know. How do we play this out? But most of the time when I connect with folks and when people I'm coaching with are like, well, I'm a servant leader, I have an open door policy. I mean, I guess except for when I'm talking with you or doing a meeting, just that idea that we always have to be available, that if we don't say yes, it means we don't care. And that's not true.
Yeah.
It's absolutely not true. Yeah. Usually what is reality is that when we do that, when we are always available, when we can't say no, we're actually not anywhere. So we say that servant leaders are present. If they're at home, they're present at home, because you'll never be able to serve the need if you're not present. And if you're
I
at
really
work,
like that.
You are present, because if you're not present, you could be there and you could be 1,000 miles away, and you might as well be 1,000 miles away.
Yeah.
So
and
always available means
Jon,
we're never available.
That's not an easy thing for a lot of people. You're a very interpersonal person. I can tell.
Yeah.
Just in our interaction, and my experience with you, you're a very interpersonally driven person.
Yeah.
That's not my natural that's not my nature. It's not my natural instinct. And so I've had to purposely kind of create that within me. And a lot of times for me, being present has been challenging. And that's a very important part of leadership, is learning how to slow down and just be present with people. Yeah. If it's walking to the coffee pot and interacting with somebody around the coffee pot, be present right there with that individual. If it's, like you said, in your home with your kids or with your spouse, be present wherever you may be. So I love that. Good thought.
Thank you. And it's real, right? Like, most of us, we're driven and ambitious at work, but a lot of us have that relational piece, and getting into the place where we can say no so that we can say yes to other priorities in life. Getting to the place where, and I had to do this because even though I love people in relationship, I am also extremely ambitious and very driven towards the things that I care about. And so I had no problem if you come in the office, I'm just sitting here typing like, yep, I got you. 100%. I had to get to the place where, okay, I flip the phone, I shut the laptop, I actually get up from the desk, I move over to the table, and I sit down straight away and look at you. And then we have our conversation. Those type of things lead to me being able to also then say no when it comes to boundaries around work time and what I need to do to make sure that my life priorities are hit. So two of the big ones are most definitely people pleasing and always available. And I already touched on one more that we can talk about, which is that servant leaders have a bleeding heart. It ties in with that boundaries thing. But I've heard that it's bleeding heart, or what's the total opposite side of that spectrum? Well, it's just business and you don't care about people. And in, 99% of people, anecdotally, of course, that's not a real stat, but in 99% of people, that is not true. But because we believe that servant leaders must have the bleeding heart, kind of that endless compassion, always saying yes to the mission work, not being able to restrain, we actually limit our impact. And I did research for the book, and I found out that a bleeding heart is a real thing. It's called a ventricular rupture. And I was like, okay, what does that mean? It means a bleeding heart. And what's the result of that? Almost always death.
Yeah.
The result of a bleeding heart, a ventricular rupture, is almost always death. And so out of the Psalms verse there, right, sincere heart and skilled hand, we built and I used to start to integrate these things together, that I always want to be going with my servant heart, but I also need my business mind to be able to say, what's going to serve the mission best here? Perhaps I really, really, really want to give people raises, and we're really, really, really in the red, and it's not going to work. And I have to figure out how to serve the mission, the people, and the organization all at the same time. And by doing that, bringing that servant heart business mind together, I can make decisions with a people approach, with a performance approach, with a mission approach, and with a money approach.
So, John, when you were talking right there at the end, I'm like feeling this tension, and in the information you gave me, you talked about leading in the tension. So, what is the tension of leadership? Was there any connection there of what you just said?
Yeah. So here's the kind of the aha or the surprise, is that it's the tension of serving and leading. That if we go full servant, we kind of, sometimes we get pulled into this nature of maybe being a little bit subservient. Or if we go all leader, sometimes we might tilt off to be a little bit of a boss. And as you engage with the book, you'll actually see in all of those myths, we walk through the tension of servant leaders are people pleasers, or they must be self-serving. And we say, no. In fact, servant leaders are mission driven, right? Or that servant leaders are bleeding heart, or it's just business. And we say, no, servant leaders come with their servant heart and their business mind. That servant leaders are naive and that they don't really know how the world works, because if they knew, they'd just be conniving like the rest of us. And we say, no, they're aware. They are honestly aware, right? And so pulling at that tension, and that when we lead in that tension, where on either end, there is a point of diminishing return. But when we hold on to serving and leading, to servant heart, business mind, to not people pleasing, not self-serving, but mission-driven, that is in fact where our integrity, our influence, and our impact start to get amplified.
I like that. That's a great analogy and tension.
Thank you.
That we need to negotiate through.
That's
So
right.
this is a personal growth and leadership development type book at its core. And
absolutely,
for us who decide to pick up your book, which I'll definitely be purchasing one and maybe a few, but what would you recommend us to do so that we can actually put this into practice and make some positive changes within us? I'm a very practical guy. I love the practical side. What can I do to kind of put it in practice?
Love it. We'll just hit the back end of the book where we talk about reinforcing it and amplifying it. And I'm going to go quickly through these, not full deep dive in, but here's what we say for reinforcing is I had a conversation with a person that said, I said, are you a servant leader? And she said, yeah, I don't really see myself as a servant leader anymore. And one of the ways that we start reinforcing this is, in fact, an identity. James Clear outlines that in his book, Atomic Habits, that identity comes before action, which leads to habit. And so starting to change some of those identity statements of, I'm a people pleaser. No, right? How can we change that to, I am a mission-driven person that tries to meet people's highest priority needs? And starting to change our language around those in our identity statements and really leaning into, I am a servant leader, but then those statements that say, I can't say no, to flip it to say, I say yes and no, so that I can insert whatever it is in life, meet the priorities that I have for my family, my work, and my ministry, whatever that means. But we flip those statements and then we take small steps.
So you actually have some of these flipped statements in your book, I would assume?
Yes, we do.
Good.
We do.
Good.
Yeah. We flip them and we talk through how to flip them. And once we do that, then we lean into small steps, to taking small steps, because small steps are the things that start to do it. So maybe you have that conversation like I did, where I had to show up in that meeting. Well, guess what? It meant that the next time I practiced, I role played, I rehearsed, I got a little, rocket fuel from my cheerleader, and I got in there and I said something that I thought was extremely confrontational. Turns out, no, it was basically a piece of information that in my brain I'd worked up to be conflicting, and this was going to send everything off the rails. And everyone's like, oh, interesting. Good to know. And then they moved on. It took me 3 or 4 days to work myself up to say that one piece of information, but small steps. And then we have to reinforce it with people. And in the book, we talk about 5 relationships that leaders need. And we say, use your people, because it is through those relationships that we actually grow. We do not grow in isolation. It's with and through people and walking it out. And then we say specifically at the end to amplify it for servant leaders, that we adopt a through, not to mentality, that things come through us, not to us, that we give up certain things. So we put a qualifier at the end of the definition. And we say, servant leaders that really want to amplify it, that it's an act of influencing the attitude, thoughts, behaviors of others towards a shared purpose by willfully giving up personal standing. And when a servant leader will do that with a through, not to mentality, and they'll give up pride, they'll give up power, they'll share it instead of having it all just come to them. When they'll use their possessions to advance the mission, when they use their position and their platform to allow the mission and the people to grow and to speak and to be able to be autonomous through those things, that's when the amplification really sets in. And the last thing we call to is that people go all in. That if you tiptoe around the edge of this, you're going to get those type of results. But if you will go all in on those things, then you will truly amplify and be able to redefine your servant leadership and the work and the lives of your team and all that you are working to make a difference in.
That sounds great, Jon. And so I know that you have been out there in the field helping people go all in with these concepts. In your, I guess, working with people, how have you helped people redefine servant leadership? What are you seeing out there I guess the question would be, is what are the results? What are you actually seeing? How are you seeing organizations change because they're implementing some of these concepts that you are writing about in this book?
That's great. So there's a case study that we want to release next year, but we have a book to put out first. But we have an organization where we've been working with the executive leader, the team, we've been training. And so we've basically kind of worked our way through with these principles and these foundations, as well as how to practically lead out. And they were about a $7.5 million organization. And in about 2 years, they went to $10 million as an organization in an industry where about 3 to 5% growth is pretty standard per year. They were able to do 25% growth in 2 years. So tremendous there. But that's the monetary piece. That same leader, that same leader was struggling with addiction and was struggling with guilt and struggling with being able to be present wherever he was. And his leaders and his team were facing a culture where they were always on. They always had to be on. And they were burning people out and the retention was going down. And what we hope to be able to put through when this case study, when we go out there, is that not only was it a financial gain, but that there is a personal gain in how well they are doing everywhere in work and in life, and that they do have increased employee engagement and retention, and that all of these things are happening as we work with specific leaders on this and on how to practically, tactically lead themselves, align their teams, develop the leaders that they have, and build a winning culture.
That's tremendous. That's excellent. Glad to hear that you're out there making a difference, Jon, with these principles. So I'm going to end in just a moment with my last question that I ask all of my guests. But before I do, is there any other thoughts in your mind that you'd like to share on redefining your servant leadership?
For anyone that's thinking about that and you have a story like I did, where you were telling yourself that it has to be this way, and that if I don't do it this way, I'm either not going to hit the mark or that people are going to judge me, I would really invite you to challenge that idea and test its validity, if it is in fact true, or if it's something inside of you, like it was something inside of me. And what might be true. Get a perspective from a different individual, way different than yourself. See how they see it. And then start to test, how might you start showing up just a little bit differently, so that you can continue to work these things out where you might be boxing yourself in and the box doesn't exist except for inside yourself. That's what I would invite somebody to. And if they're thinking about it, whether they pick up the book or not, go through that quick process to see that if what you're telling yourself is true. Because I found that in a whole lot of cases, it wasn't. And I found a tremendous amount of freedom on the other side of the process that I outline in the book. One that I get to be free to lead as me where I need to be and in the work that I am doing, and showing up in a way that I can truly attempt to love the people that I am with.
That's tremendous, Jon. Tremendous. Redefine your servant leadership. Amplify your integrity, influence, and impact. I love it. Can't wait to get my hands on it.
Thank you.
We're going to end with this one last question.
Yes.
What's one thing, and it can be related to this topic, but it doesn't have to be, but what's one thing you wish you could tell your younger self?
Don't buy the bicycle on a credit card when you're 23 years old. No, that's not the one, but it's a fine one. I wish I could tell myself that.
That is a good one.
You're right. But what I would actually tell myself is something that has just in the last half decade just completely changed my life and my perspective. And it came out of 1 Corinthians 4, where Paul is saying to a group, Corinthians, right, that you don't judge me. I don't care what you think. And frankly, I don't care what I think. I care what God thinks and how God is going to judge me. And that kind of self-forgetfulness, that forgiveness, that being able to place judgment and perception and everything in the ultimate authority has freed me up. And I wish I could go back to the 18, 19, 20-year-old me and say, man, a lot of these things that you think matter and that you think people are looking at you for, and that you're trying to do all this stuff to make sure that, kind of being that chameleon, if you will. I wish I could go back and say, man, doesn't matter what they say. Frankly, it doesn't matter what you say. It matters what God thinks. And that's who you're working to please. And not because that gets you any further, because it's by grace, brother. But because you want to, you've experienced through that. That's what I wish I could go tell my younger self.
That's great advice. Can you go back and tell my younger self the very same thing? Well, Jon, this has been a great conversation. Thank you so much for giving us your time today. It's been such a pleasure to have you on. If people want to connect with you in some way, first of all, where can they find you online? And of course, tell us more about, or tell the listeners more about where they can get your book, when, et cetera, all the details that on this book, because I know that everyone is going to want to get this book.
So you can find out more at redefineyourservantleadership.com. That's redefineyourservantleadership.com. It'll walk you through where to get it if you go on Amazon or if you go elsewhere, as well as being able to get any of the things that we are giving away as a part of the book launch.
Awesome. Definitely. If you're if you made it this far in the podcast, go get the book. You need to get this book, and I can't wait to get my hands on it and read it and glean from the concepts that are in it. I've already gleaned a whole lot in this podcast interview, so thank you so much, Jon. Again, I'll put those links in the show notes if anybody wants to quickly find the link. And so this concludes our show today. And if you're a new listener, be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to audio podcast or on YouTube. And also, it would just make my day if you would take a minute to rate the show and write a review on Apple Podcast or wherever you listen. My name is Ryan Franklin. Thank you so much for joining us on the Christian Leader Made Simple podcast.